Hey everybody, welcome back. This is video 5 of lists. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do something called splicing. So splicing, this is something that you don't really find in Java and C++. You don't really find this capability as easily there as you would here in Python. In Python, it's really easy to splice a list. And by splice, I mean to take a subsection of the list. For example, if I want to take just these first 5 items in the list, I can do that. Or if I just want to take these last 2 items in the list, I can actually do that as well. So it's pretty easy to actually do this by splicing. So splicing, it looks very similar to what we've done before. So let's say I want to access the element at the first index. So pretty easy, right? I just put index 1 in here and run it and I get 15. Okay? But let's say I wanted to access the first 2 or the first 3 or 4 or any number of elements. Well, then I can actually use the colon here. So let's say I want to access index here to, I don't know, index 5 or something. Okay? If I use the splice and I run this, what it will do is it will take everything from 1 up to 5, but not including 5. So it takes these 4 items from here. So it's a splice of the list. It's like slicing out a section of the list. Okay. Same thing if I want to go up to 9. I can take it all the way up to here. So I get 1. If I put a 0 here, that'll include the first number. So this is all numbers except for the last number. Alright, so a splice really is just anything using this colon here and any number you can put in here. And you can actually not put a number in here. So let's say I do 5 and nothing. So if I do 5 and nothing and I run this, it goes all the way up to the end of the list. So it starts here at index 5 and goes all the way to the end. So if you don't put a number here, this is like saying just go till you have to the end of the list. Okay? So let's see what happens if I do it the opposite way. If I do it the opposite way, you get pretty much what you expect, except remember if it's here, it's not going to include that index. It takes 4 items. So it takes from here up to this 4th item. So it just starts at the beginning and goes all the way up. That's the same thing as doing 0, 4. Okay, so it's the exact same thing. Alright, so splicing looks pretty easy, right? So I mean, it actually is pretty easy. There are a few other things we can do with splicing. I mean, if I do this, I get the whole list. But something that might seem a little bit weird is you can actually use negative numbers in here. So if I use a -1, what do you think this -1 is going to do? Okay, so if you said that it's going to go all the way up to the last except for the last number, then you are correct. -1 says start at the beginning here. Remember, I have nothing here. It's the same as putting 0. And take everything but the last character. Okay, and this is actually pretty useful for when you have a string, maybe a file, a string from a file, because oftentimes a string from a file, so I'm going to say file string is equal to, hi, this is a string, and then in that string there's going to be a new line, and this new line, if I take this off, so if I took that off using an array, so I turn this into an array and then I take that off, then I have a string without the new line. It would take that off for me. And when we deal with strings in an upcoming unit, I will talk all about how you can manipulate the strings and take off those end things. But this idea right here is basically what that comes down to. Okay, so if I take 4, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to take off 4 elements, or I do 8, it's going to take off 8 elements, and so on. Okay, so what happens then if you put a negative in the front? So let's start with a -1. This time it just has 15. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. Let's see what -2 does. 17, 15. Okay. So it doesn't quite do what you'd expect it to do, because when we put a negative on this side, it actually takes off these characters. This one, we might think, ah, well, I'll take these characters off and I'll be left with the rest. But actually it doesn't. What it does is it starts here and starts adding characters. Okay? So if I do 5, I'm going to get the last 5 characters, or the last 5, sorry, elements of my list. Okay? So that's kind of the difference here. This leaves you with the rest of the list and takes off the last 2, meaning gets rid of the last 2. But this one still starts at, it's like taking off everything and then adding on the last 3. Okay? Alright. So that's basic splicing. There's really not too much to it. You're just using this colon in here, and you put some numbers in and you take the information that you want out of your list. Okay, there's a couple more things you can do with splicing, and of course read the documentation, check out what you might be missing, and go do the practice stuff, because that's where I'm going to do more examples. Alright, in the next video we will continue on with list. I think we got a few more list videos, so I'll see you then. If you have questions, leave them in the comments as always.